Hi guys, it's Sam for Digital Meat, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to set up a crouch button for Unity using Playmaker. Now, what is Playmaker? This is their web page. Playmaker is basically visual scripting for Unity, so kind of like blueprints for UE4. Now, if you're anything like me, I'm a Cinema 4D generalist, and I'll make assets and stuff, and I want to see them in a game engine. So I don't particularly want to learn how to code. I don't particularly want to learn a programming language. I haven't got the time for it, and this is great. It's a visual way of doing. It's basically visual scripting, visual programming. So I suppose we better jump straight into it. This is a scene that I set up in my last tutorial, which was this one. Xbox controller set up for use in Unity. So basically, if we go to edit and go to project settings, input, it was where I set this up. So if we click play, I'm now using my Xbox controller. I can spin around, move forwards and backwards, jump. The B button does nothing, nor does the Y or X buttons, and the trigger buttons don't do anything. So at the moment we've just got movement and a jump, and that's all she wrote. So I'm going to set my B button up to be a crouch, and I'm going to show you how to do that via visual scripting. So what you want to do first is install Playmaker. I've actually got a package, I think, so I went to Assets, Import Package, Custom Package, and there's my Playmaker. I double-clicked on that. I've already done that. You'll be doing the same thing, or downloading it directly from the store into your project. And what it does is it creates this menu here with a welcome screen, and it also creates this Playmaker folder here. And I'm going to go down to Editor. And I think that's the latest version, Unity 5 support. So I'm going to double click on this. It's decompressing the package. I'm going to select all of that and import. Oh, maybe it already did it. I'm not sure. Okay, so this is importing in. And while that's importing in, oh, I can't press anything. Good. Excellent. In fact, I might cut the video here just so you don't have to watch this. Oh no, I think we might be nearly there. There we go. Okay, so we've got Playmaker in there. Have we got any layouts? No. Okay, right. So what we got in here then? Let's have a look. Add-ons, getting started, upgrade guide, install Playmaker. Okay, always back up. Made a backup, go ahead. Okay, let's try that. Oh, I think I've already just done that. Okay, it already exists in my project. That's a good one. Okay, so we can do that. Right, now I'm going to need my editor window. Okay, here we go. So Playmaker's actually woken up now. So we need the Playmaker editor. Please check the upgrade guide for more information on this release. Okay, cool. Okay, fine. Right, so this is the editor window. Now, if you grab the Playmaker bit at the top here, we can actually drag it down to the bottom here, which is what I usually do. And then that gives us, it sort of clips itself to our scene. So, Playmaker is basically state machines. So, something will be in one state, and then you say when this event happens, it moves to the next state in the state machine, and then you sort of have it loop round on itself. It's probably going to be a lot more easier for you to understand if you just watch me set it up. So let's get started. Let's get started with our crouch button setup. So first of all, we've got this is the scene that I created before. I've changed the ground to blue. It was green, and that's because when you click on the FPS controller, you can see that it's a bit easier to see. When it was green, it was a little bit harder to see because that itself was green. Okay, I created a null and dumped my scene in it, so all the cubes, the floor, the directional light, all of that stuff, I just put in a null called scene, just to keep it nice and tidy. Okay, so in FPS controller, if you scroll this down, this is our sort of camera. This is the actual controller with all Unity's regular scripts and stuff. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new empty object. And I'm just going to rename this B button crouch. Okay, and I'm going to put it in the hierarchy of my first person controller, so it's just nice and neat and it's in there. Okay, let's have a look, and we'll zero it out so it's in the middle of our controller as well. Okay, so we've got an empty object. That doesn't really help us, so what do we want to do? We want to right click on this, and I think we can actually add FSM. That's what we want to do. So we go to this window down the bottom here, right click, add FSM, and if we go back up to the B button crouch now, you can see that it's created this little tag on it, if you like, kind of like Cinema 4D tags, and it's basically just saying that this this final state machine is going to communicate with this object here. Okay, so it also created this Playmaker GUI. Now, if you click on it, it actually says that a scene should only have one Playmaker GUI. Playmaker will auto add this component, and you can disable that in preferences. I think that you don't need this with the new GUI stuff in Unity. I certainly don't need it for this tutorial, so I'm just going to get rid of that. Okay, so if we click on our B button crouch now, it brings up our state machine. So what happens when we hit run is, if you've got this start box, you always get that start box, and you always get a state 1 that it goes into. So if we hit play, you can see that it went from start and jumped to state 1. Okay. And you can see that it's in that state because it's lit green. But if we click on that state, we can see that there's nothing in there. Okay, so I'm going to click on state 1. We can rename it up here. I'm going to call this listener because it's basically listening for something to happen. And obviously we have got nothing happening. So this is listening. So what do we want this to be doing? Well, if I press the B button, this has got to be listening for the B button being pressed. So we can go about that by, if we click our action browser down here, it gives us a long list of things that you can do in Playmaker. You're probably going to look at this and go, Jesus Christ, what is animate, float, curve, color, all of this stuff. But as we go through these tutorials, you're going to learn exactly what each of these do. And I'm by no means a master at this, so if anyone out there can think of a better way of, or more efficient way of doing something I'm doing, it'd be great if you leave it in the comments. That'd be good. But okay, so what I want is to get the B button. I want to get it. So let's type in get button, I believe. Here we go, get button. Get button down. So we want a button press. That's what we're looking for. So let's grab that. Add action to state. So it just basically, we'll cross that off now. And it adds it to our listening thing. So now we've got get button down. Right, well, it needs to know the button name. So if we go back to our edit and go into our project settings in input, I want it to be the B button. So it'll be this name here. So if we copy that, click back on our B button crouch, and we can whack that in there. It's getting the B button. send event. Well, the event is, once it's got the B button, I'm going to system event, network event. Let's create a new event. I'm just going to call it button press. So let's call this button press. Create event. Event not used by this state or any global transition. Click to add transition state. Okay, well that's fine. Store result. We're going to leave that to none. That's fine. So we got an event. So let's Playmaker Global is created. Use Playmaker tools. Okay, cool. So it's created this button press, and I can choose from these things now. Event not used by this state or any global transition. Click to add transition state. Oh, there we go. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I expected to happen automatically, to be honest. Okay, so it basically listens for a button press. Once it's detected the B button has been pressed, it sends it on to the next stage, which is this event. I've just called it button press. So that's fine. So what does it need to do next? Well, it needs to pass it on from detecting the buttons. Oh, we got an error here. Let's have a look. Blah, blah, blah. Transition mission target state, B button crouch, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's basically saying that it gets here and goes nowhere. Don't worry about that. So after it's listening, it's detected the button's been pressed. It then passes it on to the next thing, which is I'm going to add a state. And this state I'm going to call crouch. And now we need to define what this crouch is. So what I'm going to actually do in this, I'm going to what am I going to do? I am going to transform the scale of the FPS controller in the Y direction. So if we go to this FPS controller, we can see the scale in the Y here. I can actually scale the Y so it's, I don't know, half of what it normally is. That sounds good to me. And the reason that I'm doing that is because, excuse me, the reason I'm doing that is I could do it another way. I could say that, let's have a look. You could grab the first person character and change the position of the camera. But the reason that I'm changing the scale is because this scale will also control the collider. So if you wanted to, there we go. So look, I can actually change the scale of the collider and the camera comes with it. And the reason that I'd want to do that is because if you're going to have your character crawl under stuff, you know, you can't get under something and then you crouch and then you can get under it. That's why I'm going to do the scale, because it scales the actual collider as well. So if we click back on this, so this crouch, so obviously you don't want to press the B button and it just snap to half the height. You want it to like a transition between standing up and crouching down. You don't want like this snappy action. So what you want to do is tween. You want to tween from standing up to crouching down. So if I go to Action Browser and type tween, okay, so what we got? iTween. I think what I'm looking for is iTween scale. That's what I want. Here we go, iTween scale 2. So from this value to half of it. So if I choose this and then add action to state, there we go, and cross this off, we can see what we've got here. Scroll back up to the top. Okay, so game object, use owner. So that'll be, use owner means it will be referring to the owner of this tag, which we don't want. We want a specified game object. What is that game object? Well, in our case, it's going to be the FPS controller. So we can grab this FPS controller and drag it into this field. Boom. There we go. ID, we don't have to worry about that. Transform scale. We don't need to worry about that actually either. Vector scale. Yes, this is what we want. Okay, so let me just have a look. Do we want a vector scale? Transform scale. Yeah, okay, so we want a vector scale. So we can actually press this button here. So instead of using one of these options here, like setting up a variable or something, we can actually just press this little button here and it opens up the vector scale. So if we look at the scale of our FPS controller, let's go back up here. It's 111, which is basically saying it's 100% of, you know, its scale. That's its original scale. So we want to leave the X on 1 because we're not scaling in the X or Z directions, because we want to scale in Y. Y is in Unity, Y is up. So I'm going to say I'm going to be half the height. So 0.5. Originally it was 1. And we're going to make it 0.5. Okay, so next is time. It's asking, this is a float value, okay? So the time in seconds the animation will take to complete. So a second, I think that'd probably be too long. I don't know if this will actually work at all, so I'm just going to hit play, and then I'm going to hit B. Now we can see that nothing's happening. I can walk around. It's listening. Nothing's happened. Okay, so I think it's probably because I need to... You can see that if you left click and drag out on the button press, it gives you this little thing. And this is what you use to connect up to the next state. So I'm going to whack that into crouch. Boom. So it's actually connected now. So if I press play now, what you'll notice is it jumps to listening. It's listening for a button press. I press B, and there we go. It's crouched. Only problem is I press B again and nothing happens because we haven't actually passed it onto another event yet. So I'm going to quit out of play mode and click play again, actually, because you can see how long this took to crouch. That's too long. We don't want to be waiting around for our crouch to happen, so I'm going to take this second time and I'm going to change it to 0.5, so half a second. Let's try it again. Press B. That's a lot nicer, a lot quicker. Okay, just press escape and then the play button. Okay, so we got our time now is 0.5. The delay, I don't want to delay. I mean, you don't want to hit the button and then it, you know, if I put a delay of 1 in seconds, you'd hit the button, then 1 second later it'd crouch. You don't really want that. You want an instantaneous sort of result, really. Speed, none, because this speed will... Is it going to pop up with a little thing? No, it's not. But you don't need to worry about that. This time is dealing with how long it takes. So this is the ease type. So it's linear. So basically, when you press the button, it's just a linear gradient of movement. So you'll just move through in a very linear fashion. And to make it a little bit nicer, I quite like... where is it? Ease in, out, quad. I quite like. Ease in, out, quad. There we go. The loop type, leave that at none. And then start event, finish event. Real time, we don't need that. Stop and exit. Loop, don't finish. Okay, good. So that's that one set up. Now, what we're actually going to need here is we're going to add a transition. And this finish is already set up here, and I'm going to choose that because basically once it's listened to this button press, it goes to the crouch and executes this tween, and then once it's finished doing that, it finishes. So this is giving it a chance to go out to another state. Oh, I fed it back into itself. We don't want to do that. I think there's a way you can actually just get rid of that transition. Transition event finished. Nope. Oh, well, I can leave. Oh, there we go. Delete transition right at the bottom. So I think I can just Control Z. There you go. Okay. So once it's finished the crouch, what does it need to do? well, it needs to listen again because it's listening for another B button press so you can get back up. So we'll add another state and we'll call this state, I don't know, let's call it listener 2. Listener. If I try and call it listener and press enter, actually, let's call this just 1 for the time being. I've called this one listening, and that's why. So let's call this listener. Okay, that'll do. And let's copy this name. And let's try and call this one listener. It will come up with this error. Name already using this FSM. And it won't like that because it won't know. They've got to be names that are unique. Okay, I'm just going to take a drink. But that's no problem. We can just call this listener 2. They've only got to be unique within the same final state machine, by the way. So if I put, I don't know, made another object. So we've got B button crouch here. If I made another object and put another Playmaker tag on it and then called something else listener, that would be absolutely fine. It's just within the same state machine. So listener 2, we're really basically going to copy what we've done in listener 1, really. So if we go to listener 2, it's the same thing. We want to get the button. In fact, could I duplicate this? Copy states. Yeah, fuck it, why not? And then paste actions. There we go. So we've got listener 2. I've pasted the actions from this one straight into this one. It's exactly the same. And then we can link this up to this. Boom, that's fine. It's given us a warning, event not used by this state. So let's click that again. It'll add something. In this case, it's add button press. We can change that in a minute if we wanted to. But in this case, actually, we want button press. It's going to be exactly the same as this. So, okay, listener 2, get button down, B button, yeah, button press. It's exactly the same as this one. And then our transition event is, in this case, we want button press. That's what we want. So it's listening for the B button press, passes it on to come out of this, and then it needs to go somewhere else. So we need to add another state. And I think I'm going to call this state uncrouch. Could have called it stand up because that would have made more sense probably. And while we're at here, we might as well add a transition finished. That's fine. Okay, so in uncrouch, what do we want it to do? Well, we want it to return to what its original height was. So again, we can have a look at this one. I think if I right click in here, we can copy all selected actions. Fine. Go to this one, right click and paste actions. So now it's exactly the same as this one up here. But remember, the original scale was 1 in the Y. So this one's saying that we want it to go to half of 1 in the Y. And then when we uncrouch, so if we select this one, we want it to go back to 1. So we're going to change this to 1. Again, everything else is exactly the same. Ease in, out, quad for the ease type. The loop type, we've got none. Yeah, I think everything else is fine. So we just need to connect this up to this. So that's good. And then we need to connect this one back up to the listener. So now we've got a loop. So basically, this is listening for a button press. You press it, it crouches. After it's finished crouching, it passes it back to this listener. And that's listening for another button press. And when you press it again, it uncrouches. So let's actually see if this little bad boy works. Let's scroll this down a bit so we've got a bit more real estate. I'll press play. And I'll pick up my controller. Okay, so we can move around as normal. You'll notice that the cursor's hovering there in the middle of the screen. You can actually use Playmaker to hide the cursor. And I'll show you how to do that in another one. in another tutorial, but for this is fine. So, okay, if we look at the state machine at the bottom, it's listening for a button press. I'm going to press B now. Boom, it tweens. And as soon as it's finished tweening, it moves on to listener 2. And now that's listening for a button press. And when I press it again, boom, he stands up. So lovely. Well, that's a lovely noise as it gets up there. I might try and let me just exit this. For now, actually, if I go to first person controller and go all the way down the bottom, we've got this audio source here. We can actually untick that for the time being. So let's do that again. There we go. We haven't got horrible noises now. Okay. So there we go. We've got a simple crouch, and it is a simple one. It's very simple. I might move on to something a little bit more complicated in the future, but now I've got a jump button. I can move around. I can look, and I can crouch. So there you go. It's nice and simple, and you've got a nice setup there. So what I think I'm going to do is save this file ready for the next tutorial on Playmaker. I hope that was of some help to you guys, and I didn't ramble on too long. I hope that I explained these state machines well enough, but I think it will get more clear as we go on and on. So, as always, guys, check out the YouTube channel, the website, digitalme.uk, and I'm done. Bye!